For this program, I would like to introduce the author of Fade into Red, Reshma Barshikar, and we have Arshia Sattar as the speaker, and we have Professor Zakia Sarwar as the moderator. A few words about them.
No.
Arshia Sattar is an Indian author and translator, and she has also written 3 books for children, and she teaches classical Indian literature at various institutions across the country. She is also the founder and director of Sangam House, an international writers residency program located outside Bangalore, now Bengaluru. Then we have the author herself. She's a travel writer and novelist. And, would you believe it? She was an investment banker. And she also has this talent for travel writing and writing, as it were. And she has written for India Today, Travel Plus, Harper's Bazaar, National Geographic Traveler, and has a literary blog as well called The Caterpillar Cafe. She divides her time between Mumbai and the Nilgiris. The Nilgiris, as you know, if I'm right in my geography, are the Himalayan foothills, right? And that's where we get the Nilgiri oil, which is so good for my aching joints. And Arshia Sattar ka aapko bata diya, Professor Zakia Sarwar, for whoever is in Karachi, she needs no introduction, but I will introduce her as a distinguished educationist, founder of Spelt, who's known as Mother Spelt, ardent supporter of literature, art, music, theater, and all cultural activities, and a host par excellence. She's a great cook. So over to you now.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. A very, very quick apology. 2 of us are Indians. We had to go for police registration. We were not able to come back in time. We got stuck in the fabled Karachi traffic. So I'd very much like to thank our colleagues who stepped in so manfully to keep the session sort of going on time. Reshma, Zakia Appa, I'm Arshia. We have very, very little time, so I'm just going to fly through this. Reshma, once an investment banker, now a travel writer, with a book, Fade into Red, that combines the travails of a professional woman and somebody who loves to travel. But what I found fascinating about this book, and we're going to hear from Reshma shortly, she'll read a passage from it, is this idea of how the sort of the paradigm of the romantic novel, say a Mills and Boon, for example, how you've turned that paradigm on its head. And you look at men in terms of their physicality rather than women. So did you have fun doing that? Because it seems like you did, that you really enjoyed describing, oh, he has such long eyelashes, oh, his aquiline nose, all the things that we're used to reading about women, you've just turned that around. So the power of the female gaze is what I felt. So do you want to...
Thank you. And again, we apologize profusely for this change. With regard to, I found that when I started with trying to describe myself as a character, I found that to be, started to be a bit inauthentic. You rarely go look at yourself in the mirror, and in fact the only description I have in the book of herself looking at herself is she has grey hair, because that's exactly what you would notice as a woman. You'd never notice that you have pretty brown eyes. You would never notice that you'd notice you'd look fat or thin, platypus or gazelle. You will notice that you have grey hair, what people say about you. But you never look at yourself, but you would look at a man or a woman discerningly. And I do think you judge people on the way they look, and that's exactly what you do. And I think romance fiction is starting to say that it has to be slightly based on reality, because these women are real. These women are not products of what people want to read, but these women are real, and therefore they look at men, and they look at women, and they judge women and their clothes.
They certainly look at men. Zakia Appa, I'm going to invite you into this conversation. You reviewed the book.
Yes.
And you have a great fondness for it. So
Yeah,
maybe you'd
thank
like
you.
to
Well,
talk about it a little bit.
It was a pleasure to read a book by a young author, and The Light for Tomorrow. And I would say, yes, it's a travelogue, but it is much more than a travelogue, because it is not actually focusing only on scenes and where you go and what you do, but it's incorporated the kinds of issues that are faced by people today. For instance, one thing that struck me very much was the tension of the young professional woman who is true to her profession, is devoted and passionate and wants to do her best, and at the same time has a great pull because of the kind of demands that our society makes on women who are working. There are no concessions made for them of any kind. So, and the other, I mean, we had actually, because of the shortage of time, I had got quite a few excellent passages and examples of her great control of language, and very novel way of putting things, like putting a pause sign to talk. You know, it's the way the metaphors are used, the way she talks about things is very, very refreshing. And she's also, it's a journey of self-discovery. And so, she says something like, love that came from knowing 1,000 disappointments when you find a diamond after a lifetime of zirconia. Even a speckle would do. Why did all that cracks matters? The thing is this, that a very interesting technique has been used by Reshma, in which, it's in the same line as Ulysses and Virginia, Virginia Woolf, in which the stream of consciousness, in which the heroine, Arshia, gives her responses to what's happening around her, what's going on in her mind, and at the same time the story goes on. And those are small italics in which, she says, why did all the cracks matter? I mean, that's a question she's asking herself, So very interesting techniques have been used to make the heroine come alive and somebody who's struggling with what are the modern issues in our part of the world.
Well, James Joyce and Virginia Woolf, that's big stuff for a first book.
I think so.
Do you want
but
to...
this, the stream of consciousness, the way you know that, for instance, you are here and you are listening to what we are saying, but you are also conscious of the fact that at the back of your mind, there are 3 or 4 things that are going on. And although I'm speaking, I have the same kind of things. Now that's our reality. And going in depth in that reality, it was a great thing to see. I really like that technique.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm very touched.
Do you want to read, Reshma?
Yes,
the passage that we all love so much?
Strangely enough, she has great control of language and excellent paradigms and metaphors that she has used. And I wanted to give you a taste of her descriptive powers by choosing a passage which I was going to share with you. And then when we ran short of time, I said, Reshma, let's at least compare what I have got and what you got and what you could read. And strangely enough, out of the 2 that I had chosen, one of them is something that she also likes to read. So over to you.
Thank you. Do I read the...
I think you should read the first one.
The first one?
Yeah, that's much better.
Are you reading as well?
No, I'm not reading now.
Okay, fine. So...
Reshma, just set it up.
I will set it up, yeah.
Yeah, it's page 45.
I think I'll just 1 second. I just need to... Yeah, I will do that. 1 second. I moved to my... Here. I got it. Got it? Yes. Okay. Where? Sorry? This is the one. Oh, that's the one? Okay.
Sorry, because we've been juggling with time, so we had to change.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about the book while Reshma's locating herself. It's about a young girl who has a boyfriend who's safe, he's secure, he does all the right things at the right time, and because she's a professional woman, she has this opportunity basically to go and do due diligence for an industrial conglomerate that's buying a vineyard. So she goes to Italy. All the warning bells ringing, ding, 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 single girl in Italy, vineyards, handsome Italian men. But the passage that she's going to read now is about Ira's home and where she comes from and her roots.
Yeah. Okay.
As she walked down the stairs, she heard pots clang in the kitchen, her aunt's remonstrations and the pulsing of the coffee grinder. The air was so thick with anticipation that you could punch a hole through it. Her stomach churned, but the nausea was contained by the sight of her Pati, her grandmother, draped in all the colors of the peacock, swaying on the teak bed swing as she threaded jasmine flowers. Her fingers looped ceaselessly around the stalks as a white necklace grew out of her palm and flowed into a sea-green silk lap. It was mesmerizing. Ira joined her in the silence and grabbed some thread and a few flowers. A few seconds later, a necklace with bruised petals emerged, and she stopped, looked down at her maimed necklace, and asked rhetorically, "Why is nothing perfect, Pati?" "Aira Kanna," smiled her grandmother. "Perfection is like running after the edge of the sea." She continued in Tamil. "To catch, you need to keep moving. You cannot stay in one place." She placed a bunch of flowers in Ira's hand. "Do some more." Suddenly, a digital monotone version of Happy Birthday to You rang through the hall. Karthik had fixed this as the doorbell a few years ago as a joke, and her grandmother had developed a certain fondness for it, which Ira ascertained was really her being thrifty. Her grandmother nodded, "Open it." As Ira ambled through the door, a whiz of purple beat her to it. Mangama, who could be so agile when she desired, said, "Why is everyone dressed like a ridiculous board?" Ira spoke to no one in particular. "Why are you so very cranky?" Ramya chided as she walked down the stairs, arranging the pleats of a shocking pink sari.
Interesting, and you can really feel the way that kitchen was and how people in the house were behaving.
Yeah. Do you want me to read anything else? The kitchen scene?
Yeah.
Okay.
While she's looking for it, I will also share with you, like I said, it is about self-discovery. And the way that Reshma has put it, she says, so why not be an art historian? And she says, I don't know. One, I left to come back to India, and two, I knew next to nothing about what I wanted to do. She sighed. You start in one place, and everything after that, it's like a game of snake and ladders. It's all about how the dice rolls. So the uncertainty that the professional woman has in her life, and that refers to your question that you asked about safe marriage and exciting marriage, whether to choose this man or to choose that man, and whether to be safe or to do what your heart is telling you to do. I think that kind of problems we have in our midst because we want to have a good match.
Well, I think it's lovely that, in South Asia, we now have we have the choice of the safe guy versus the wild guy. I think, perhaps our grandmothers were just, no, get the safe guy, and now we're empowered enough to say, well, actually,
I guess.
no. So we have literally 3 minutes. So let's end, Reshma, with your voice reading another passage, and then I'll wrap up. But you have 3 minutes to send us out with your voice in our ears.
Thank you. Soon she caught the whiff of jasmine in the breeze, and she opened one eye gingerly. A large veranda came into focus as the cool air made its way under her thin muslin sheet. The ceiling fan groaned with every turn, orienting her senses, accompanied by the sound of a window beating against its frame. She was in her room. She grinned and listened for the cackles. The sounds reverberated up the stairs and into her bedroom. The seeker on her bedside pointed to 10. She had slept 15 straight, dreamless hours. The last thing she remembered was Karthik leading her into her bedroom, tucking her into a bed. She slid down the rosewood banister, dragged her feet over the smooth stone floor, and absorbed its delicious coolness. The ground floor was built over a sunken covered courtyard, large enough to hold a swing bed and an oval 10-seater rosewood dining table, and still have the space for a game of hopscotch or to sleep 10 people during Diwali. She made straight for the kitchen door. Her mother looked up with glazed eyes and smiled. "Ira Kanna, you're finally up." Ira waddled towards her like a duckling and put her arms around her neck from behind. The hiss of mustard seeds diverted her attention, and she looked around the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Just then, her father's sister, Kalpana, greeted her by placing her wet chin on her forehead and sat down on the floor, next to the grinding stone with its layer of brown spices. Kalpana arranged the folds of her faded purple silk sari under her jeweled toes and scolded Mangamma, the elderly housekeeper who was almost as old as the house, as the spices had not been ground to perfection. Mangamma chewed her betel leaf and nodded absently, perhaps acknowledging the complaint, perhaps not. It would have been hard for an outsider to differentiate between employer and employee. Ramya, her mother's younger sister, could be heard jabbering through the kitchen window as she picked curry leaves and coriander from the herb garden. The kitchen looked like a war room, and Ira took a usual seat at the small dining table near the window overlooking the coconut grove, and the large tulsi pot that completed every South Indian household. She looked around the large and blue and white kitchen that was alive with clangs and hisses. Teak wardrobes lined one wall as a large L-shaped granite slab ran through the other two sides. Copper, brass, silver, steel, in all shapes and sizes, gleamed as if it was polished yesterday, although they hardly ever were polished. The huge space in the middle was reserved for preparatory work. This was her grandmother's domain, but the queen was in the middle of her morning pujas, and as her coterie was hard at work. All this for her, Ira smiled. She heard the tinkle of an ankle bracelet even before she saw Ramya. Ramya hugged Ira from the back and handed her mother bushels of curry and coriander leaves that glistened with the morning rain. "Ira Kanna, we've been waiting for you to have a cup of coffee." She took a seat and stared at Ira's mother, Divya, who was pouring the black decoction into a brass saucepan of milk added in tamar. "Only one mouthful for me." Turning to Ira, she explained, "I'm trying to cut down." Her mother quickly took the pan off the stove and moved to make way for Kalpana, who stepped in to mix the spices. Ira had always been fascinated with the silent dance of shifting reins in the kitchen where it was a full house. Her mother, a lawyer and terror in the courtroom, always deferred to her sister-in-law as it was a natural law. Her aunt lowered the flame, and the sound started to wind down as her mother and aunt walked towards the table, each carrying 2 steaming tumblers. "We need to get the saris, Divya, today only," said Kalpana, sitting cross-legged on her chair and blowing into her coffee. "We will not have time over the weekend. Did you see Sujata's diamonds yesterday? They were the size of betel nuts and sapphires." She raised her eyebrows. "She must be performing some magic in that household. I need to learn those bedroom tricks." Ramya winked. Is that it? Yeah.
Thank you.
think
Thank
that's
you
all we
very
have time
much.
for.
Thank you, Zakia Appa. Thank you very much, Reshma. The best way that you can participate in this discussion is go buy the book. It's called Fade into Red. It's in the bookstore. Thank you very much for being here. I'm really sorry we didn't have time to include you in our discussion, but read the book. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reshma, Arshia, and Zakia. It was a pleasure listening to this, and I have to